What's up, guys? My name is MrHurriicane, and I'm back with more Madden 17 today, and we're talking sliders and franchise yet again. We have received the first patch for Madden 17, and that took care of the big run-pass glitch. And now we're getting closer to the start of my franchise, and here are the sliders I am currently working with. Things have been changed since the last update. A lot of this has been influenced by charters changes, and then I added in some of my own, and I've done some of my own side testing to get things more to my liking. So you're seeing my special team sliders are different than his. I'm not using penalties right now. I'm not sure how important they are, but I have them all at default for the moment. And I've been working on getting the accuracy, wide receiver catch, and pass blocking settings right. I'll focus more on run blocking today, so these aren't necessarily the same sliders I'll be using in my franchise, but I expect they won't look very different. I've spent a lot of time using charter sliders and tweaking them, and I think I'm getting close to something I'm happy to start with once I get those week 1 rosters. So now I'm looking at those week 1 rosters being the factor in starting this franchise, and then wherever my sliders are at then, we're going to kick things off, and I'll tweak as we go. Maybe every 4 to 6 games I'll reevaluate and see what needs to be changed. Obviously, no slider set is going to be perfect. The one I used last year was far from it, and I think that I'm getting some pretty good balance out of this set here. And in this game, I'm obviously playing as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the Atlanta Falcons, and I think this is a pretty good representation of what these sliders can do. They're not perfect, and there were things in this game that I didn't like, but if I nitpick the entire time and tweak based off things I don't like, then we're going to be here forever, not starting the franchise. And right now, I'm very excited to get this franchise started much sooner than I have over the past 3 years. And on this set, you're going to have good timing with your passing game and know who the primary read is going to be and what you need to do to get him the football and when the ball needs to come out. Now, this punt was a sky kick, and I haven't really tried the sky kicks much, so don't worry about punt power there. Yes, it's 35, and I've done a lot of testing. And I'm going to start talking about these individual sliders here in a moment, but I want to try to stay on the A topic, which is the San Diego Chargers franchise upcoming. And I do want to use pre-existing injuries this year. Reason being is because I like the idea of my franchise universe splitting from the NFL universe right at week 1. Last year it was strange because I didn't start until mid-October, so the season was already like 5-6 weeks in, and there were injuries that were happening during the season. So it was like, if I start now, have pre-existing injuries, well, Dante Fowler was hurt in rookie minicamp, but then you have Brandon Linder, who went on the IR early last season, and then other teams had early injuries, and then you stack preseason injuries on top of those. It doesn't make a ton of sense. So what I like to do is start with pre-existing injuries. That way, like Teddy Bridgewater's on the IR for the Vikings, they have Sam Bradford, and that's how it's going to be for my Vikings series that just got a lot more interesting here in the past week, I'd have to say. And right now I'm leaning towards simulating the preseason and starting the first episode with practice, the first team offense against the first team defense, and then the second teamers against each other, and game planning for the Kansas City Chiefs week 1. The reason being is that the rosters are already going to be set, and I'm going to be using the actual NFL injuries, so I think it makes the most sense to just get past the preseason and start the series basically right after preseason week 4 and get week 1 prepared. You will still get to see the entire roster play and get to know those players who are down on the depth chart or on the practice squad, and I like that idea for an opening episode. Leave your feedback on that down below, and here's a big play from this game. The Falcons called a man blitz and left safety Keanu Neal to cover Lewis Murphy, and the results were not good for Atlanta. When you're looking at how the game is playing, it's equally as important to look at play calls and sliders. The play call there beat the Falcons, not any slider. So to wrap up the franchise talk portion of this episode, basically once those week 1 rosters are out, nice overthrow there by Matt Ryan, tough to get those on all Madden. Once those rosters are out, I'm going to be ready to go. I'll do a couple tests to make sure that certain players aren't being released by their teams. That won't take very long. And then I'll be recording the first episode for the Chargers franchise, and we're going to be ready to go much earlier than we were last year. So now let's dive into these actual sliders. I want to give you my reasoning for each of them. These are all Madden sliders. I play with 50 injuries, 50 fatigue, and 55 speed parity, threshold, whatever they're calling it nowadays. One more nice play here. Look at that touch throw that gets knocked away from Lewis Murphy. Some really good looking stuff in here, and I'm just wanting to make sure that happens regularly. But let's start at the very top here. Quarterback accuracy. And this is really where my testing yesterday really took off. I was playing as the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott because I wanted to see how he would fare on these sliders. And one of the first plays I had with him was just a throw like that one you saw there to Mohamed Sanu, very similar. And he threw it way off target directly to a defender. And my feeling, and I have no idea for sure, but my feeling has been that the interception slider is not only catching for defenders, but I think it's a magnet. And I want to break down this play here for you quick. I know I'm going all over the place here, but I got to show you why certain plays are happening. This was Tampa 2 coverage. Quan Alexander is the deep linebacker. He bites on the underneath route, gives up the deep middle to Jacob Tamme, which is a blown zone coverage there. So back to what I was talking about before, that I had to throw with Dak Prescott way off the mark, and I noticed that most of the throws I have that are way off the mark go directly to a defender and are always intercepted. So I got to thinking, is the interception slider a magnet? So I got into practice mode yesterday, and I took Joe Webb, who has significantly worse ratings than most quarterbacks in terms of accuracy. I believe his short is like 78. And I began with no defense on the field, meaning no interception slider could impact the gameplay. I was rolling out, throwing off his back foot to receivers 40 yards downfield. Never got a single pass that was as bad as the 5-yard in that was overthrown to Vic Beasley. By the way, there I tried to dive, or I tried to give myself up, ended up diving and missing a chance to add at least a field goal here before the half. So what that made me start doing is stop tweaking quarterback accuracy so much, because once I got into practice mode, I realized that if there was no defense on the field and it was just the quarterback and the sliders and my offense, things looked a lot cleaner. So from there I dropped interceptions down to 35 apiece, and I haven't been seeing those crazy inaccurate throws going directly to defenders anymore. I'll still test and see if that happens, but I've thrown a few hundred passes and haven't had a single interception like that. So QB accuracy is 25 for the user and 15 for the CPU, and they're still, throwing very well on those sliders, and you see overthrows occasionally, and I still might balance that out a little bit. I've mainly been doing tweaks in terms of increments of 5, and now on this last stage of testing, I might start doing more smaller increments and being like, what happens if you go to 24 QB accuracy? But I don't want to fall into the rabbit hole of slideritis here. I don't want to spend too much time doing this, but I'll spend a little here before the rosters are out. Also, when the interceptions were set to 50, I was noticing linebackers could basically catch as well as wide receivers and tight ends. I think for balance and accurate interception numbers and good gameplay, you need to put the interceptions down. Maybe some people have had different results, but I like currently 35 for each. With this QB accuracy testing I was doing, I was also working with wide receiver catching, and you notice that both of my settings for CPU and user are set to 40. And reason being is because I wasn't seeing enough drops. I did Joe Webb throwing to Ted Ginn. I was just throwing slants with no defense, and then I tested it with defense. And Ted Ginn would not drop the ball. I had 80 straight completions with him between catch on 50 and catch on 45. Then I knocked it down to 40, started putting a defender in there, and there became more balance. In my tests with these settings, I have not seen the drops get out of control, but I will continue playing in practice mode and these actual mini games with them. There were 3 drops in this game, 1 by Mohamed Sanu and 2 by Lewis Murphy, who has very poor catching ratings. Pass blocking. I have it set to 55 for the user and 10 for the CPU to try and get a balanced time to throw. This is a really tough one to get just right, but in this game at least I think both teams had quite a bit of pressure each, and here's a sack by Gerald McCoy, his second of the game. With run blocking, I have it at 60 for the user and 40 for the CPU, and a lot of these offensive line tweaks were from what Charter had updated his sliders with, and I liked the results, but I wanted to tweak a little bit from there. And in this game, I think there's pretty good balance in the running game. There aren't many big runs between the tackles. It looks like outside runs are going to be one of the tougher things to get balanced this year, so I might have to just get into practice mode and start running stretches at various run blocking ratings and see where I get the most balance from. Fumbles are still at 50 each. I'm not seeing a ton of them. There are a lot more when the quarterbacks get hit, and I'll probably do some carrying testing with players that have lower carrying and see how many carries it takes or how many fumbles they have per 50 carries and try to figure out where the best spot for that rating is. Reaction time. This is back to what Charter was doing with pass coverage. It's at 52 for the user and 25 for the CPU. And I think I'm getting pretty good results in terms of just reacting to various routes, breaking on the football, and being able to contest the catch. I'm not sure if it's exactly where I want it to be, but I'll be messing around with that a little bit. It's playing out fairly well right now. Interceptions, again, are both at 35. Pass coverage, 55 for the user and 75 for the CPU. And I thought for the most part, the passing game in this Falcons-Buccaneers game played out really nicely. I thought I threw with pretty good timing on majority of these passes, especially on this drive when I was feeding Mike Evans trying to get us in scoring range. Tackling, I have it set to 52 for the user and 50 for the CPU. And I had it set to 52 because I was seeing too many long runs with like broken tackles and these huge jukes by like Lamar Miller, and he's a good running back, but I was seeing like Barry Sanders highlights from him. So I bumped up tackling a little bit, and I haven't seen those type of runs anymore, but the CPU can still get big runs, like they had a couple nice ones outside with Devontae Freeman in this game. Special teams. I have it back to 50 punt accuracy. I'm not sure if it's important to bump that up like in years past. The changes I have for special teams are 40 for field goal accuracy, and I did a test this morning at mid-range kicks, or a little bit more than mid-range. It was like 45-yard kicks with Blair Walsh. I was kicking, and then I let the CPU kick, and the CPU was missing too many at 35, and I wasn't missing any, so I raised it up to 40, and I had better results. And then for punt power, Charter has it at 40, and I have it at 35. I was punting with Jeff Locke, and his average last year, I believe, was like 41 yards. And to me, for a 41-yard average, you had to get to 35 power. I think the best average last year was like 47 or somewhere around that for Johnny Hecker. And if you keep it on 50, I was getting an average of 55-yard punts with Jeff Locke, and that's just too far. I might test this out with a better punter with more leg power like Johnny Hecker, and I'll see if he's still outkicking his coverage. I just don't want to see those 20 to 30-yard punt returns be too easy for the user. So that is going to wrap up this video. These are the sliders I am currently working with, and I will continue tweaking them and getting them ready to go for the San Diego Chargers franchise. And if I make any more changes, I will let you guys know of them. I'm not going to be making any more of these slider update videos. I should be able to get my franchise underway shortly. And when that happens, I will show you the sliders that I am using. So thank you all for watching today's video. Please leave your feedback down below, and I will see you guys later. I've been spending a lot of time on these slider tests, and I'm hoping that we get this franchise ready to go this week. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day.